Dooley here. You already know. All right. It's been a minute since I've been on the live for Facebook. Not Facebook, I mean YouTube. It's been a minute. Um, because I've been living my life and enjoying it, in a great relationship. Been with my love for almost 2 years now. And there's nothing like for me, I'm a Pisces, so I'm always gonna be rocking with love, and I appreciate all the relationships I've been in and over the years, and have learned so much, for through being able to open my heart, to learn things, to make mistakes, uh, to have my heart broken. It's been one journey. But I have to say that the last 5 years or so, been a real it's been one of the biggest learning lessons for your brother in a long time. It was the passing of the transition of my mother, uh, even the separation from my children's mother. Um, it was a lot, and coming from coming from that space and actually coming up for air, you know, has been a journey, and has been a real learning journey for me. And I appreciate every step of the way. It's been deep, it's been very self-reflective, for me, even in a place of feeling like even depressed, not even knowing I was depressed, going through all those losses, coming from a place of feeling like, how could I fill this type of void that I was going through at the time, and then learning from all those things to actually attracting love again in my life. And I have to say, the system with it's been amazing. It's been a lot of work too, but it's been amazing because we're willing to be a real mirror for each other, and also willing to look at each other, how ways we can improve each other's lives, not only as individuals but for our families, our children, all that. So just giving y'all a little check in with Brother Dooley and what he's been on. But the aliens, I have two dope uh graphic novels that I want to share with you. And then we're gonna jump into some extraterrestrial stuff. Cause that's a great topic. A lot of things going on, a lot of files being dropped by Trump, you know. Um, but before I even get into graphic novels, let's talk about it. I was taught very young about extraterrestrials. All right. This is nothing new to me or my circle of comrades, of friends. We've been talking about this for years. Okay. I'll tell you how far back it goes, at least with me and my people. It started for me at age about 13. 13. So that, shoot, man, that's about 30 some years ago. You know what I mean? When this information first came to me. And it came, believe it or not, through this brother's teachings. You know, this is the holy tabs. Got my library here, different things. But yeah, it started from there. And at that time, I was like 13 years old. And what's so interesting that I find is that May 8th, Donald Trump drops this whole, we're going to reveal the UFO files, right? May 8th, I just learned that the Elijah Muhammad was arrested and them claiming that he was crazy of talking about UFOs and stuff, the mothership back then. And also, I learned, and I didn't know that Malachi York was was arrested May 8th. And this is all dropped at May 8th. And And I think like these dates aren't just out of nowhere. I think they're all very much connected. Now, I wasn't one to call myself a Nuwabian, or a person that was a part of the Nation of Islam. But I had a lot of friends. I even had a lot of family that were very much involved. You know what I mean? So when I was getting some of the teachings back in the day, as a young teenager, we heard that black folk, melanated folk, that we ain't from this planet. All right. That's what I heard at such a young age. And to me, I could remember the moment. Again, I'm like 13 years old. I can remember it like yesterday. I was like, what are y'all talking about? You know what I mean? That was my reaction. You could imagine like a 13-year-old saying that black people have origins from outer space, that our origins did not start here on planet Earth. So for me, at that time, I was like, hold on, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? We from outer space. Like, y'all watching too many sci-fi movies, too much Star Trek. I don't know what y'all on, but that's too much for me to handle at this moment. And but at the same time, I did not brush it off because some of the people that were presenting this information to me, I had a lot of respect for these cats. A lot of these brothers were a little older than me, you know, and very, in my opinion, very intelligent, you know. So I was like, I got respect for these guys here, and they saying they bringing me to these classes, and I'm learning about very what we would call galactic history, something that's not really taught in your everyday school system, you know, or history in general. So it took me many, many years, many years to do my own research to start to see like, hold on, wait a minute, there's something to this. There's something to this, you know what I mean? Um, these people might not be as crazy as I thought, you know? And again, it started from a lot of indigenous cultures around the world. The more I studied, this was seeing like, okay, the Dogon connection, and the people of Mali, having this information about, again, the Namos in the Sirius constellation, Sirius B and C, which cannot be detected. I'm looking for this book I have on here about the Dogon in my library here. But again, showing that that these people knew about these series B and C, something that I couldn't see with the naked eye. And when these people came across these particular tribes, they're like, how do y'all know about this? And how were you able to know about Sirius B and C and all these other things? So this, and the story goes on. We know for those who've studied this stuff, we know about the Hopi, we know about the Kachina, we know about all these Danaka lines, we know about all these different phenomena that have pointed to so much evidence to show that we are not alone. You know what I mean? And this is way before the internet that I'm talking about. This was back in the early 90s when we had to go to the library, where we had to do immerse ourselves in study and come across some of these very esoteric teachings, you know? But now, as we know, um, you have ancient aliens. You have the Billy Carsons. You got all these people that came out years later that are saying the same thing. The ancient astronaut theory. Um, it could go on and on and on. Even homeboy right here. I got his daggone book up here. I just seen it. They say they unalived him. You know what I mean? David Wilcock. the Ascension Mysteries. You know, plenty of people that have been talking about this thing about the UFO, or AUPs or whatever they call them now. But the thing that I find interesting, in my opinion, was the early book of William Cooper. And again, a lot of people in the 90s was up on that. And what and I and he was talking about things that would unfold around this time, you know. So we're talking about people talking about starting a new world order, a one world government under the banner of being able to use some type of world type of thing that would bring us all together. All right. And that was brought through William Cooper way back then, through the book The Behold the Pale Horse, and saying Project Bluebeam. Okay, we're gonna put up these things where it's gonna be a so-called attack. What so-called borders wouldn't mean anything at that moment. We have to come together for a common cause now. So many things that were being brought up there, right? Um, in Project Bluebeam, we know it's dealing with high technology that deal with holograms, and the high technology that comes to the point of holograms where you could even touch the holograms. So now you're playing with people's perceptions, their view on reality, what is real, what is not real. Now, it could anybody that plays chess would know that in the midst of chaos, some people can make moves to their so-called advantage. All right. So some people might throw it out and say, like, oh, you seen this UFO footage? That's not real. That's project. First thing they want to comment and say, oh, that's Project Bluebeam, blah, 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 you know? But then they forget about, they throw everything out and say, oh, well, it's all technology from the government, and the UFOs or the UAPs or whatever ain't real. People forget the teachings. People forget the star elders. People forget that people have actually had real life situations with star beings and star elders. You know what I mean? So this person right here, I'm just bigging up. I'm just putting it to the attention of David Wilcock because a lot of people have talked about him, and supposedly him killing himself and all that sketchy business. And, I was a big person that would listen to this man, but I got one of his books because I found he was interested along the lines, especially with his earlier work, along the lines of him saying that he was possibly the reincarnation of Edward Casey, the so-called sleeping prophet, which was a very interesting dude, right? But David Wilcock was one of them people that talked about Simio Toko, you know, and Simio Toko being one of what? The African avatars, you know? And people like him, which he transitioned like in the 80s. When we talk about the African avatars, let's get big up to Simio Toko, but also we got Sheikh Amadou Bamba. You know what I mean? And when I first started hearing about the African avatars, I started first hearing about the Afro Brother Sufi and also Uncle Hank Rising Son. And I'm talking about Simio Toko. And Simio Toko was saying to the government that basically you can't kill me. They try to do so many things, try to kill him so many times, just like Sheikh Amadou Bamba. And he said, yo, I'm coming back. So, but when I come back, I'm coming back with a full force of others that are like me. So the so-called powers that be know they coming back. Not just avatars, not only just enlightened beings, but a lot of the star elders. We're living in prophecy, right? Living history amongst our eyes. A big shift happening right now. You know? I find it very interesting. I find it very interesting because you can't stop the sun from shining. You know what I mean? That joint's gonna come up even if you try to spray all this stuff in the sky, whatever. You can't stop what's destined to come. You know, and to know that, to know that when there's a shift in consciousness and a change within our reality, and those who are fighting tooth and nail to try to hold on to the old paradigm, they're trying to bring all the cards on the table, pull all the games on the table right now. Let's try Project Bluebeam. Let's do this. Let's try to do this and that because they know if you dealing with some beings on an evolutionary spiritual side that are much more advanced than these human beings here, and especially some of these people that think they run the world. If it comes to that place, they're like, hold on, wait a minute. We don't have the upper hand anymore. So they're fighting tooth and nail to try to be able to hold on to the old paradigm. But the jig is up, as one of my old Reiki teachers, God bless her, who transitioned, Sister Leela, who you would say the jig is up. It is up, my friends. You know? And the beautiful thing about this, I'll tell you, even Baba Kalindi, you know, he's an ancestor now, you know what I mean? And if those don't know about Baba Kalindi, please look that man up. See some of his old videos on YouTube and different places where you could find him talking about the transdimensional crystals and all the things that's popping off right now. But he, if y'all listened very carefully before he transitioned, he was telling people around 2025, 26, and when he said 27, that's when everything is gonna you know, if that's when it's all going down. The elder already told all of us a while ago, you know. And what was Baba talking about? He was talking about high dose mushrooms to travel throughout the multiverse, to learn how to be a trans-dimensional being. Now, this is where it gets very interesting. And this is where people like to pick sides. There's certain people that say, well, you know, you can't find enlightenment or you can't come through a place of higher understanding or activation through those outward things. Or some people might say, oh, he's talking about drugs. No, no, no. My thing is this, as a scientist, put it to the test and also see that if it works, it works. A lot of people are very dogmatic with their thinking. They feel very, they come from a place just because something works for them that this is the gospel, that everybody has to jump on my wave or my way because this has worked for me. You know what I mean? But my thing is this is so many ways to get to you into the deeper level of understanding of yourself in this reality. It's numerous ways. And the beautiful thing is that I like to you know, put things to the test. So I have had years of experience of being able to have spiritual activations and stuff like that through the breath work, through the movement, through the so-called natural ways. And I also have had amazing experiences as well, utilizing the sacred technology of the mushrooms, the DMT, the you know, the ayahuasca, all that, the wachuma, you know what I mean, the yopo, all these different things, the snake venom, you know what I mean? They're all different aids, tools, not to be attached to them like, oh, you know what I mean? Because you might get to a point where you might not have the mushroom at hand or the DMT at hand or whatever. And you got to still know how to be able to put yourself in a trance-like state a theta state, theta brainwave to be able to bring yourself in that place to be access that information or that aspect of your higher self. Don't lean on anything. Don't be attached to anything. But understand these things are all tools when used properly. You know what I mean? So this is the time. I mean, when you we'll stop talking about the extraterrestrials, the aliens, or the star brothers and sisters or beings who don't be looking towards anybody else's teachings. That's cool. What they said, those are reference points. That's cool. But have experiences. I've had experiences. So ain't nobody can tell me that these beings don't exist. You know what I mean? First time I had interaction with them was maybe almost 20 years ago. And I was dealing with the damn grave. Now, some people could say there's different type of graves. If we all want to talk from the same lingo, we're talking about the ones that are very, sometimes very tall or very small with a big round head, black eyes, small lips, really no nose, what have you, no really no ears. Now, these being some people's literature might say these are very high tech biological beings that are robotic, that are scouters for other planets, for other beings, a level of social hierarchy. All right. And then there's some beings that say that they are biological living beings from the future. Some people say. All right. But I tell you, when I first encountered them, it was three of them. And I wasn't ready to see them motherfuckers at that time. And I freaked out. I tell you that. And like many beings, some of them have the ability to know how to phase in and out of different dimensions. So they was like, "Oh, this dude ain't ready. Let's be out. We'll come back to him another time." You know. But there's been numerous interactions. You know, before I heard about this thing of what they call the Arcturians. You know, when you start looking up these things of galactic history, you might hear about these different alien types, right? And they talk about these beings called the Arcturians, blue skinned beings, right? Very tall blue skinned beings. I believe a lot of this galactic history stuff inspires our movies. So when we talk about the blue beans, automatically a lot of people reference the Avatar movies with the, and you look at it, I say, okay, a lot of some people are doing some homework out there and and putting this right up in the cinema. But the one I seen was at Mount Shasta. Hold on, let me show y'all something. Blue beans. I was painting blue beans for a hot minute, maybe almost 15 years ago. It was like a part of my subconscious was preparing me to know that I was going to start interacting with these type of beings, you know? So yeah, I painted that a while ago, you know? But the beings that I seen, one I seen in Mount Shasta in California, and a lot of people that know about Mount Shasta will know that it's a hot spot for alien activity, a hot spot for people to see UFOs over there all the time. You know. Also, some people say it's the interdimensional doorway to enter Shambhala. You know, and a lot of people might have heard about Shambhala or Agartha. Some people might say this is a part of inner Earth or even another dimensional realm which someone can enter into. All right. Nevertheless, the case That's the best water I've ever had in my life, drinking that water from Mount Shasta. You know what I mean? They had a river joint that you would see people come out there with their jugs, their glass jugs. You just pour it right in the water right there, drink right there. Best tasting water I ever had. Right? But I was working with a Native American elder who was having heart issues. The rhythm of his heart was off. You know what I mean? And he was going back and forth to the hospital, right? I'm working with this elder. I'm doing a healing with him, right? And the type of work that I do, some people might call it psychic surgery, uh, a level of ascension work, whatever. I can't even put words or labels to it. It's a lot of things, you know. At the core of it, it's a lot of things. It's a lot. With each client person I sit with, it could be a number of things. It could be an exorcism. It could be a time for a person to be able to have contact with their ancestors or their spirit team. A level of mediumship, you know, and the ability for these intelligences to go through me to get certain work done. And again, as a scientist, I don't look at this as spookism, nor do I look at it as devil type of work or any of those things, because everyone has their bias coming from their particular background if they haven't had an experience like that. So a lot of church folk, a lot of people in Islam or the organized religion, they might say, "Oh, ooh, 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 you dealing with some jinn, or ooh, 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 you dealing with some spirits. That's bad." But when you start to learn about mediumship, when you start to learn about channeling, when you're really in your pocket, when you really knowing what you're doing, you learn about the level of discernment. You learn about the level of vibration, you know? And I hate to say it, it's like if you grew up sheltered, if you grew up in a place of like, oh, you know, everything is peachy and creamy, everything's all good, da 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 da, silver spoon in your mouth or whatever, you might have not had the ability to exercise that those spider senses. If we want to bring it on a Marvel level, you know what I mean? Peter Parker level, you know. But when you live in the hood, sometimes it's either life or death in certain situations if you don't have a level of intuition of knowing, like, I don't need to go down that street. Somebody's telling me, you know what I mean? They be over there wilding out. Or something's telling me not to walk down there because they about to let off some shots. And next thing you know, they shooting. That's a level of not only intuition, but being able to be sensitive to certain things. Even a level of kind of time travel of seeing things happen before they even pop off. Okay, so knowing those things is having to fine tune these things from a very young age. When I started to get into this type of healing work, you're it's like second nature. And trust me, don't get it twisted. There are some beings that will try to play with you, that will come through and say, "Oh yeah, I'm here to help you work with this particular client or this person here." But then them spider senses might kick in, and you might like, nah, something don't feel right about this spirit. Nah, something don't feel right about this being. This one's trying to cloak themselves, and that happens too. I remember a couple of situations. It was one being try to, as I'm as I'm seeing things with my inner eye, traversing the spirit realm, this being try to cloak itself as an Egyptian type of deity, all right, or a Kemetic type of deity, right? So it tried to cloak itself and make it look like this scarab beetle or a kepra, right? And I was like, nah, you know what? This don't feel good. And guess what? I don't feel like you're supposed to even be in this person's auric field because you don't feel right. And I'm again dealing with my intuition. I'm not second guessing it. You know what I mean? I'm like, no. And sure enough, I was able to pull back the layers of its cloak and see it for it was. It was a very parasitic being that was trying to hang on to this particular person. I was like, nope, nope, nope. Clean up house time. You out. You know? So again, when we're dealing with the level of channeling, when dealing with the level of mediumship, if we're dealing with the level of being able to know how to traverse through different realms of existence, of certain dimensions, you got to know how to use your intuition, you know? So I did that whole spill for the religious folk. You know what I mean? Because they've been taught very young through their own doctrine that anything in that particular area is demonic or possession. You know, you're gonna, you know what I mean? All these other fear things, you know. And I had to meditate on that. I had to bring that to the surface because, like, even I was listening to something the other day while I was working out, and it was talking about the book, the Gospel of Thomas, you know, and it was talking about, you know, the particular scrolls that were found in Israel, you know, near the Dead Sea Scrolls from 1945, the Nag Hammadi Library, you know. So they was talking about a different message of Yahshua or Isa or Jesus. And this particular view of Christianity was a view that was connected with you empowering yourself, you being able to tap into your own Christ consciousness. All right. A very different view or message through this particular being that one people would call Jesus, right? Now, again, to certain listening to this thing, they was like, well, the burning of the books of these early scriptures dealing with Christianity was, as you know, a political move. Because if anybody is talking about a message empowering people, saying that they have the ability to tap in and have direct experience with the divine, then what's the need of a priest? What's the need of the church? What's the need of a lot of things? You see? So again, they're going to throw in a lot of different things, even the level of saying that mediumship or connecting to the spirit world is bad, because again, that's something that you can have an experience for yourself. Right? Okay, so I'm gonna push on. I just had to say that just to say that. And when you exercise your intuition, you're able to navigate through the spirit world in a more empowering way. Okay. But again, back to the being, the blue being, what they call the they call them the Arcturians or whatever, you know. But this being was a female being. She was blue. She wasn't like the light skin blue that you seen from the Avatar movie, but a more darker blue. I say she was about 10 to 11 feet tall, dark eyes, all dark eyes, almond shaped dark eyes, bald head, long face, long arms, long fingers. All right. When she came through, and this is when I was at Mount Shasta, she worked through me to help me with this Native American elder, like I was saying, that had heart issues. All right. She allowed me to be able to be used to be able to help this man in a way where she put this high tech, like, if the only way I could say it was like a high tech type of pacemaker, which she put in his auric field, into his energy field, and put it into his heart or through the energy field. All right. After she did the work that she had to do, she dipped, she was out. And I tell you, That elder went to the hospital like a couple of days after the healing and said that his heart was back to normal. All right. Very interesting. Very interesting. Now, within the change of this thing of saying with Donald Trump, all of a sudden, oh, we're releasing these files. Again, we know everyone has their own agenda, and it could have been a long time ago that they released this. But again, they were saying we don't want mass panic. How is this going to be related to our all the systems that we have in place, the educational system, religious system, the monetary system, all these things. You know what I mean? It's a very trickle down effect. So for the longest time, there's been this hush hush. Even those who work in the military, different government factions, if they see anything, they didn't see anything. You didn't see nothing. You know what I mean? I remember my grandfather on my father's side, he was a World War II veteran. He would talk to my grandmother all the time about the UFOs they would see. You know what I mean? They'd be coming out of the water, he would say. All right. But you have to understand, a lot of these military men and women that have seen certain things with their own two eyes, they were told you cannot report this, not even to your own family. Your job will be uh, terminated. There will be repercussions. Even certain people would say threats on their own life. Okay. So for the longest of time, this has been suppressed. Okay. But we have to ask ourselves why now? There could be many reasons why now. It could be the many reasons of even knowing that each of us have these handheld devices, these phones. So it's much more easier now for people to say, oh, wow, did you see that? I seen that. May upload that, put that up on the internet. So there's so many people that got these things in their hand, they can't really have control of the narrative anymore. Okay. I know y'all seen that famous thing of it was in South Africa. I think this was in the early 90s. And they had all these children that seen all these UFOs come out of nowhere near their school. And they came out and they seen the beams. Now, we could think about adults and say, adults have their own agenda sometimes. Maybe might be lying their ass off to get some clicks, to get some, oh, I got some likes or whatever, or get my popularity for my next book or whatever. But the children, the babies, they ain't got no reason to lie. And if you look at this old interview, you see all the kids, they drawing little pictures like, yep, we seen the crowd that landed right there. And yep, we seen them little beings come out of the craft and interacted with us, you know? And speaking of Africa, we can't forget, Credo Mutwa. It's a famous book called The Zulu Shaman. Where is it at? I'm trying to look up here and see if I see. Maybe I ain't got my glasses on, but maybe y'all could daggone see it. Let me see. Is it here somewhere? But yeah, the Zulu Shaman. It's here somewhere. I'll find it another day or whatever. Zulu Shaman, Credo Mutwa. There was another book I was reading, actually, and it's an excellent book. It was talking about this woman that was interviewing these different healers from around the world. And there was a chapter on the Zulus in that book as well. And Credo Mutwa was talking about um, how he had his Kundalini experience, his Kundalini awakening. That's a term that they use in India. There was a certain term that he used that they called it in Africa. I wish I had the book so I could daggone share it with y'all. But within that moment when he describes it in his book, he was saying to I believe it was his aunt, He says, Auntie, I am going crazy. You know what I mean? He said, I could hear the water wave miles over. I could smell this so clearly. What I could smell the woman walking by with perfume, and she's way down the street. I can, sensory overload. He said, I think I'm going crazy. And his aunt was telling him, no, 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 you're not going crazy. You know, basically, you're having your awakening. You're becoming one with God, with spirit, you know. But Credo Mutua, if you talk about any of his work, he talks about a lot about the reptilians. He talks about the different beings. He talks about even, the different wars, galactic wars, you know, just like Baba Kalindi was talking about the galactic wars and saying that a lot of us melanated people are galactic refugees. You know what I mean? That we was dealing with a cosmic war, had to flee, had to dip out, had to go to from Mars and then from Mars to here. You know, there's a lot of things still stored in our memory, and you have to ask yourself, why do I remember none of this? You know, that's why I think meditation is so important. That's why I think even hypnotherapy is so important because you're going into the depths of your subconscious, you're going into the depths of your unconscious mind, and you're pulling up information that is on the undercurrent and you're bringing it up to the surface. Shoot, I'll never forget one time when I went in with the mushroom and they showed me an old vision of the daggone one of the galactic wars. And it felt like I was in the driver's seat right there, up close. You know what I mean? Scariest thing. I was like, what the? You know what I mean? And it was a part of me that was like, is this a vision I had through a past life? Or was this a vision of my ancestors fighting in space? And it's so crazy because at that time, you might doubt yourself. You might like, am I going crazy? Was that my imagination? You know what I mean? Then it came to a place like, wow, I didn't see this from any movie. This ain't no Star Wars or anything. This was very detailed. Like I'm sitting right in front of the damn ship. Boom, boom, boom. You know? And then when we look at things like some of these ancient scriptures, they talk about galactic wars. Ain't nothing new under the sun, y'all. You know? So, yes, I have had experiences with different type of beings. I've had witnesses to experience these things with me. You know what I mean? I'll never forget there was one client we was working on, and I was with this sister at the time that was helping me in the healing. She was like, Dooley, I want you to show me about this one particular medicine in a way that I could do some healing with some of my clients with that. I was like, cool, let's do this. I'll never forget when we was working on this one brother. And again, this session came into a place of more of like what we would call an exorcism of some sort. So he was releasing a lot of attachments on him. And one of the attachments was some reptilians, but he was able to deal with them fairly quickly, you know. But the other ones that were deep was these insectoids that it was like a whole hive attached to one part of his body, immersed in him, like a parasitic hive that was dealing with these particular insectoids. And I tell you, when you learn how to do certain healings, you learn that sound can be a technology within itself. That's why when you look at certain medicine men, certain medicine women, and they deal with the drum, the rattle, different type of flutes, different things like that. These things are technologies within themselves when you're dealing with a level of healing, when you're healing on that level with certain people, you know. So there's different ways that you shake the rattle, for instance, where the on this earthly level, observing the medicine man or medicine woman, you might think, oh, he's just doing a rattle over that person. But someone seeing from a different perspective, seeing from more of their open eye, sees that the rattle is turned into a high technology weapon within his hand, his or her hand, and that there's sparks of light and things coming from that rattle going into that person's energy field and dissecting certain things out. You see, after that session, the person I was, working with, the sister outside, she's still, after we getting off of them, off of the brother, some of them were trying to uh stay attached to her. So after I cleaned him, I had to go outside and get them joints off of her. They were tricky little guys. And she could feel it. She's like, wow, thank you, Julie. I felt you pulling it out of, this area or whatever, you know? So, long story short, these things are not to be feared. I'm not sharing these things with you so you can have a fear state of mind and say, oh, now there's something else that a nigga got to worry about. No, I'm not saying that. I'm sharing these things with people to let you know that reality is much more than what we think. And this thing of disclosure, it was long overdue. You know what I mean? It was bound to happen. You know what I mean? And your reality is about to be shifted. If you want it to happen or not, it's happening. So just be aware of that. Just know as we're walking forward into our future, to know that this is like even Barbara Kalindi said, this universe is teeming with life, different life forms, different intelligences. We ain't the only, ones walking around here. You know what I mean? I tell you, so it's like I had to humble myself one time, and then I'm about to switch gears to these two graphic novels I want to share with you real quick. But then I'm about to end real quick. I just want to share something with y'all real quick. Um it was one healing I was dealing with, right? Good friend of mine. I used to go back and forth to Brooklyn doing healing work out there with the snake venom combo, different things like that. That certain upgrades for people and also detoxing, right? Um, as I'm going, being at the space to do the work, I noticed one of my good friends. She comes in limping, her legs limping. She's obvious something's wrong with her body, right? So I asked her, I was like, "Yo, what's going on? I see your leg, you're limping and stuff." And she's like, "Yeah, my something's going on with my knee." So I told her, I was like, I could do some healing work for you if you want, you know? So long story short, before as things slow down after I was working with other people, I have her sit down and say, hey, let's do this healing. As I'm doing the healing for her, I noticed what's going on with her. It was this other woman who was jealous of her, actually, right? And was certain feeling a certain way about her and was basically trying to throw some bad juju on her. So I'm pulling out that negative entity, that negative energy out of her knee, and she's starting to feel better. But as I'm doing that, sometimes again, doing channeling work, medium work, at that moment, certain ancestors or certain spirit beings or whatever might come through a brother to help in that situation. So as I'm doing the healing, these very tall white beings come through. Now, I never encountered what we call You might hear about this in UFOlogy, or UFOologists might talk about this, the tall Nordics, the tall Nordic looking beings. And some people might say, oh, the connection to our Star Command and all this other stuff, right? Or people might even say connection with the Palladians and different things, right? Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I don't know where these beings come from, but all I do know is they showed up. Now, I'm used to seeing certain clients I work with, if they have certain spirit guides or even ancestors that come through, they might, I might feel the presence or see a Native American type of healer that might come through me, or African type of bushman, or certain things, even Chinese type of, Asian type of deities or beings, right? But rarely do I come across the white folk, unless sometimes I'm working with a white person as a client, or European. There, I might see their white ancestors come up, that might have passed away, that might want to help them from their realm or what have you, right? But I never encountered these tall Nordic beings. So they come through, and I remember it was there was a tall male one. It was a female one, and it looked like a younger one, like even like could be like a younger child type of Nordic being, right? So they come through, and I see them with my inner eye. They come through with the most, surprisingly, they came through with the most loving energy. You know what I mean? It was very heart chakra based. And I was like, wow, I was just taken aback by that, just the love that was emanating, radiating off of them, right? Next thing I know, as I'm looking at them, they shapeshift before my eyes. So they shapeshift into these reptile type of beings, and then they shapeshifted into these cat-like beings. All right. Now, for those who are up on the UFOologist type of or galactic history type of thing, they already know when you talk about the cat beings, sometimes people might have the reference of the Lyrans. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that talk about that, you know. Um, but they, and after they did that shapeshifter, they went back to their original form, which was these tall type of Nordic type of beings. They had the blonde hair. It wasn't like blonde, but it was a very light blonde hair, and definitely the blue eyes. And I was taken aback by, again, their energy, very heart centered energy. All right. Now, I'm not saying that every so-called tall Nordic, maybe extraterrestrial, is all lovey-dovey. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the ones that I came across, those three, I could say like, wow, this was very interesting. Now, what makes it even more interesting is that when I finished the healing, the sister opened her mouth, and that's when I do my check-in at the end of the healing session, do our little integration work. What did you pick up? What did you see? What did you feel? This is what I felt. Blah, say, blah. This is the beings that came through from my perspective at this time. This is the reason why I had to pick up this instrument at this time. Well, this song came through me at this time, you know? Um, so within our integration, the sister automatically came through and said, um, by the way, Dooley, these white type of beings showed up in my healing. I ain't even tell her that I seen the Nordic white looking people myself. After she said that, I was like, you know what? It's crazy you say that, because I seen them too. It was three of them. She's like, really? Oh my God, I seen them too. So I love moments like that, because most people will, because we come from a society, from a place where if it's not able to be broken down scientifically, or or if there's no proof or evidence, then you might have been hallucinating. You might have been, oh, that might have been your imagination, or maybe some negative thing is trying to influence your mind. All these different things that might people might want to throw out there, right? Because the mere fact that anything that goes outside of their normal reality, most people are scared of it anyway, right? They don't want to go there. They like, I'm used to my five senses, this reality, sun comes up, sun goes down, I pay my taxes, we go to school, I go to work, my 9 to 5, this is the reality, I know, blah, 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 that's it. I don't want to go outside of any of that. But when you see a person and two people having the same vision, having the same, seeing the same thing, you know what I mean? Can't get around that. Can't get around that, you know? And after I had that experience, it changed the view on how the narrative or the story on how we look at certain ethnic groups or certain races per se, right? Because I already heard from my other peoples that there is a history of black folk or melanated folk being space travelers. I already heard that. But I didn't hear so much about an origin for white people being out star travelers. All right. I heard a lot of different stories about the Neanderthals, white people's origins being with the caveman, all those things. But then I had to be more open-minded to know that maybe there's different type of white folk here. Maybe there's, yes, the cave dwellers, but maybe there also are a whole different type of white people that come from the stars, these tall, white Nordic looking beings, you know? And that opened the door for many other things for me to really examine and maybe look at, you know? But yeah, this is changing times, my friend. And I think we have to be a little more open-minded about this whole alien thing. Now, I want y'all to I read, for those who know me, they know I love comic books. You know what I mean? Because I'm an artist as well. I'm a visual artist as well. I love to paint and all those things. As you could see, the blue dude that I painted a minute ago. You know what I mean? So I love to paint and do the creative type of thing, right? So I love comic books. You know what I mean? My comic book journey started with my cousin, one of my older cousins, when I was a little dude, right? So my cousin Arta, who had the illest comic collection, you know, and we would dive deep into the Marvel universe. You know what I mean? That my favorites back in the day was Punisher, was Wolverine, um, even what's his name? Doctor Strange, all these different characters that really resonated with me, And for a long time, I think when I became a teenager, as I got older, I put the comic books down, and I was like just going through another stage in my own development in life, So I was like, nah, I'm good with the comics. But the comics came back to me probably in my mid 30s. And that's when I started going in and reading some of the graphic novels. When I started getting into the graphic novels, I started seeing brilliant, brilliant writers that were able to interweave mythology, deep metaphysical information, all kinds of great stories, all in packaged into this great artwork, right? So I tell people all the time, what I have a pretty interesting comic book collection here of graphic novels, but one that really just blew my mind, and I was like, man, I love this dude as a writer is Jodorowsky. And Jodorowsky, he wrote this book called um called the NCal, right? Macy. I know my homeboy got the NCal joint that I first the first one, but you know he has I have to get that back from him. But this one is like this book of the NCAL is like the one before the what happened before the actual NCAL book. But it's Jodorowsky. And the book blew my mind. It really blew my mind. Because it was talking about a very interesting crystal. And one of the main characters, his name is John DeFoe. John DeFoe is the main character, but he doesn't know how he's going to play a significant big role in the unfolding consciousness of the universe. All right. And it's kind of come through this very special crystal, right? Also I just came across this book too. It was funny. This book fell down. This is out of print. This is a very rare book. Off the topic of comic books for a second. This is Monument Eternal by Alice Coltrane, the famous jazz harpist, um, the famous jazz harpist that was married to John Coltrane. And as you can see, it's so old. The back, the front is ripped off, but this is out of print. And this is talking about her spiritual experiences. You know, and as y'all know, she went to India and was studying deep esoteric yoga traditions. Yeah, but yeah, yeah. John Coltrane and Alice Coltrane, um, deep jazz artists. You know, my father he used to play jazz music. And he got a chance to rock out with a couple of famous jazz musicians, such as Pharoah Sanders, McCoy Tanner. Um, so the likes of Pharoah Sanders, Alice Coltrane, John Coltrane, they was using sound as a tool for a spiritual awakening. There was a documentary that literally came out not that long ago about Sun Ra, the jazz musician Sun Ra, and how he was using. I also seen music as a tool for ascension, for self realization. But back to Jurowski, all right, in the NCAL. Um, Jurowski, he had the main character John the Fool, and as you know, even from the tarot, dealing with the fool is the one who is the zero. He's the one that goes beyond the levels of duality, who sees this whole thing as an illusion. This matrix, Maya. This is John the Fool right here, and he doesn't know how he's going to play. He doesn't understand how he plays a bigger picture in the unfolding process of consciousness within this universe and the sacred crystal that he comes across, right? Dope book. It blew my mind when I came across it. I was like, yo, what is this? This is crazy. And then they have like an offshoot of different characters within that book. Um, Sandman, of course. That's very good. Talking about these are very some of these right here are just ones that are very just some special titles. But yeah, it's called the Meta Barons. Let me see if I have named some of these here. Talking about the Meta Barons, right? And the Meta Barons are like the supreme warriors of the universe. And they are offshoot of the NCAL as well. Because the Meta Barons are basically they have to X out all emotion, which is deep. Like if you think of the ultimate samurai galactic samurais. These are the meta barons, right? And so one of the things they have to do is they have to be able to battle with their own father, their own pop, right? And their initiation is they have to kill him, kill their own father. And if they don't, it's a life or death situation. If they don't pass, they don't become the next meta baron, right? So I'm gonna tell you, the NCAL is pretty off the chain. It's crazy. It's just crazy, yo. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to find the meta baron um joint so you could see that, see some of the visuals on there. And then I'm gonna get to the two main books, the two main comics that I wanted to highlight. Um okay, where is it at? Meta Barons, Meta Barons, where are you? Let's see. Oh, yep, the Meta Barons. Yep. Okay. And I just seen, this is funny. I just seen this joint. I came across this joint right here. And this dude right here was just crazy with it. He was giving dolphins LSD to try to communicate with them, to teach them if they could speak human language. And this is the dude that came up with the isolation chamber, um, or the what you call it, the different the isolation tanks. The But yeah, this is just crazy, yo. This dude. They actually made a movie about this too. Yeah, yeah. I just had to throw that out there. But the Meta Barons, right? The Meta Barons again are the ultimate warriors of the universe, and they cannot have any emotion. Now, what's so interesting